Mama's Show. I'm Christine.
I'm Carissa.
And before we get into our special guest stuff, I just wanted to talk, just chit chat.
Yeah. Fuji.
We just had Fuji this weekend. And that actually was our friend-iversary.
Yes, it was. It was.
So we noticed you guys last year.
Yes.
At the same tournament, and our husbands talked, but we still didn't talk.
No. It wasn't until Chick Jitsu, I think 2 weeks later.
Right.
But I guess that's their friend-iversary, not really ours. But it's okay.
Yeah,
We're celebrating it. Okay. We're claiming it.
That's okay. Yeah. But the kids did pretty good.
Yeah.
Layla got put in some extra divisions, and she was undefeated in all.
She did really well. She got 5 gold medals.
That's
in
awesome.
5 divisions.
That's awesome.
Let's see. She went
she
up in weight in some of them and age in the others. But I think it's really hard to kind of find other yellow belts for her age and weight. But she had a couple pretty good fights with a fellow yellow belt and a couple of others, so it was good.
She did awesome.
She was really tired at the end of it.
Yeah, that was a long day.
Yes. I think she had 11 matches.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's crazy.
All right.
She
that's awesome.
Able to submit most of her opponents except for one, which and they cross train at our gym, so it's it was nice to see them rolling and stuff.
Taller,
all really positive vibes, and
it was a good time. Even with because our daughters finally got to
roll
compete with each other.
Yeah, they did really good. So Dahlia did so good against her.
Yeah, Dahlia did pretty well against her. I know she was a tough opponent, and I was just do your best, and she did really well. She got 2 golds, and then the silver was in the division with Layla.
Yes. And she was undefeated for all the other ones, so
she did pretty good.
They're just baddies.
And Kenny did good. He just he did lose to his friend, or our collective friend. Shout out to just Shay and Aiden. But she did well, and so did he. So we're not too mad.
No, I think it's nice that it was nice that it's always a positive,
right?
Feel, even if you're
a little scary.
Yeah.
I
mean, even with Diego, Layla gets to roll with Diego sometimes, and there's never that animosity or anger or anything, and I think that's just so important, because literally right afterwards the kids are playing with each other and running around and everything.
Yeah. All right, should I let him in?
Yes.
Okay. Hi, Jim.
Hey, gang. How are you?
Well, it's nice to meet you.
Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thank you for joining us.
You bet.
So how has your week been? How's your day been?
So far,
Yay.
Great. We got off to a good start, right?
Awesome. So, if you guys don't know, Jim is actually how I met him was through Carissa. She invited me to your Facebook page, the parents of BJJ kids. And I just started following your son, Logan Hicks, who is a
beast.
Yeah, everyone knows him. Well, if you don't know who Logan Hicks is in this community, then you're not following the community very well. Then, so, thanks for coming on the show. So, do you want to take a moment to introduce yourself?
I'm just a jiu-jitsu dad. That's about it, all I do is burn gas and drive a kid around.
That's what we do. That's what I do.
Yeah.
That's right. No, I think everybody's kid's jujitsu journey is
Mm,
different. Everybody's kid's different, and that's the I think one of the biggest things that you have to be careful with when you start giving people jujitsu advice about their kids is, hey, every kid's different, every parent's different, every family has a different vibe, culture. I think that's the culture is what every family has a different culture. So, um, in my case, like I was listening to you guys' podcast and I go, this is kind of interesting because y'all are young and you had kids when you were young. I had kids when I was old. Okay. So I have a completely different life experience, a completely different perspective when you have your first child at 39. Okay. You're showing up to jujitsu classes older than most of the parents' dads. Okay. So, I mean, start doing the math, right? So you have a completely different, because I'm sitting here going, man, we got kids having kids over here, because I see you guys as kids, right? So,
that's so nice. Thank you. I'm 36.
um, so yeah, so I had my first child when I was 39, and then I picked up two teenagers by marriage. I have two stepchildren when I was, I don't know, what was that, 45 or something like that. So I went from no kids at 38 to three kids at 46, and so my perspective on things, my the way I perceive things is going to be different than this same guy if I was 20 something years old and had a kid
Right.
in
Right.
jujitsu. Because I can tell you, when I was 20 years old, I saw the world completely different.
Yeah.
So I had to get beat up. I had to get beat up a little bit more to have the perspective that I have now. I needed a couple good beatings. So, but so when if I say I'm like, oh man, I'm going on a jujitsu podcast. I'm going on this thing with two women that have kids in jujitsu, and we're going to be talking to other parents with kids in jujitsu. I'm like, big disclaimer: everybody's different. So just because I say something may not apply to your child. I can only speak from the perspective of my child,
Yeah.
who's weird.
Oh.
So that's just he is. He's weird, and people say to me, well, how do I motivate my kid? I don't know. I've never had to do that,
Yeah.
so I don't know. I have nothing to give you there, so I'll do my
You're,
best,
you're
you
pretty
know.
humble.
My wife would not agree with you, so.
That's funny. So, oh yeah. So, are you guys train in Virginia? Virginia Beach? Okay.
Yeah, Virginia Beach. Let's see.
How long have you guys been out there?
His
Oh,
whole
okay.
life. Okay, I was third generation military. I moved here
Oh,
with the
sweet.
military.
Okay. We're military
Okay,
family
so
too. So, and so is Carissa.
yeah,
So,
you understand. Yeah, and that's a whole
yep.
different
Yes.
culture, isn't it? So, yeah, I moved here in
Okay.
1990, and so I didn't, he didn't start jujitsu. I didn't have him until 2007, and he started jujitsu when 2012 when he was 5. And so, and we were at one school for a
Okay.
while, and now we're at Diego's. We've been at Diego's for a while,
Yeah.
Um, so it's let's see, when did we move to Diego's? I think we moved to Diego's in 2017.
Oh, okay. That's
So
quite a long. Yeah.
he's been there. Yeah, he's been there a while. Him and Diego are kind of like the Vulcan mind meld. So
That's funny.
right. They call at Pans. It's so funny because anybody asks me where's Logan, I'll say find Diego. You'll find Logan
Aww.
because he's like they call him Diego's white shadow.
That is funny.
Because well, what they do at Pans is funny because what they do at Pans is Diego's like at Pans you're so far removed from the mat, so Diego has to
Right.
yell, right? And Logan, so he's yelling for the kids and he's trying to coach the kids, and Logan stands right next to him counting off the timer for Diego.
Oh, okay.
Oh.
So they have this team
Nice.
thing going on whenever they can, and so and they didn't. They didn't plan
It
that.
just like
It's just how it happened.
organically
It's
happened.
just
That's
how
pretty
it,
cool.
yeah, that's how it happened. I mean, they've been together so long
Aw,
that they can finish each other's
that's
sentences.
that's
But
kind of sweet.
That is awesome.
it is, yeah. They're I kid Diego that he's about the same mental age as my son, but
He's awesome. He is so awesome,
no,
though. I
yeah,
cannot wait
he
to
is.
see him.
He has the biggest heart. He has the biggest heart of anybody you've ever met, and you probably, I don't know if you know this or not, but Daniel came to train at our gym when he first moved
Mm.
here, and he was giving Logan private lessons, preparing Logan for his
Oh,
first camp,
cool.
Oh,
That's so
and
full circle.
and
I
the
know.
yeah, and the first, it was really funny because when Daniel first got here, he didn't speak English,
Uh,
and the first lesson that Logan had with him, we get in the car afterwards, and Logan says that was the best lesson I've ever had.
oh,
And I said, how can that possibly be that? I mean, you've been training, he's been training at this point, 5 years or whatever. I said, the guy doesn't even speak English. He goes, I don't care. I knew exactly everything he was
oh
saying.
wow.
He goes, he has a way of communicating with his
Yeah.
body and a way of communicating what he does. He goes, language didn't even come
That's
into
so
it.
cool.
Yeah, so they've always had a very good
That's
relationship.
pretty neat.
So, and of course, Logan's gone down there and trained with him a lot.
Yeah.
So,
That is so cool.
That's so neat.
Yeah. And that's
Yeah.
actually how I kind of came across the Parents BJJ page and then just started kind of communicating with Jim online, is just through like Professor kind of telling me a little bit more about some of the people at Diego Bispo Academy. So very cool.
hmm
Well, awesome. So, what challenges did you experience as a parent when your son first started jujitsu? Was it a culture shock?
Yeah, so I wrote some notes on this
No, that's perfect.
because at my age, there's things on shelves you just can't reach mentally,
This is awesome.
so so the first thing is I didn't know it was a competitive sport.
Ah.
I just thought it was, we're doing a martial art, all right? So I spent, growing up, I was in the military, so I spent, several years in Japan and everything. So I was around the martial arts and really had a love for it, even though I never really studied seriously or anything like that. But my brother had, and my brother had been involved with the Gracies and stuff like that, and so my brother really encouraged me. And my brother made a really important statement one time that I think might resonate with some people. This was before Logan was born, and I asked him, just because I was thinking about having kids, I said, what martial art would be best for kids? Now, you gotta understand, my brother's got black belts in so many different martial arts, right? He's been studying since he was a kid, and he's got everything from Taekwondo to Muay Thai to Sambo to go. Anyway, and he said, you're asking the wrong question. I said, okay, what's the right question? He says, the right question is what martial art are the kids going to have fun at so they'll stick with it? And I said, oh, that's a completely different paradigm than what's the best martial art, because I was thinking, we'd all watch UFC 1 and watch, Hoist wipe out everybody. We're like, whoa, we got to get into that, but I think he was 100% right. And it turns out in retrospect, he was 100% right, because guess what? That's what happened. So I honestly signed him up for jujitsu for the self-defense, and he was age 5.5. But I had a very unique perspective on this, being an older parent, because here's why. I was a football player, and in college I also boxed. Well, after college, nobody wants to play football anymore. There's no end to that. So now Jim has to get his butt to the gym, okay? And I start gaining all this kind of weight because it's not fun anymore. Meanwhile, my brother, who's the martial artist, who wasn't the jock in high school. I was the jock in high school. My brother wasn't. But he's got this hobby that keeps him fit. So now to this day, the two of us, if you put the two of us next to each other, we look like a before and after picture. There's me before and him after. He looks amazing, right? And so I said, well, maybe, I never thought, I didn't think jiu-jitsu was a sport or anything like that. So I just said, well, maybe, it'd be something that Logan likes to do, and it'll be like David had. He'll have a hobby that he can continue. And then when he's done with high school and college sports like I was, he'll have a healthy hobby to keep him healthy. And that's what I thought about when I put him in jujitsu. So I had no idea about the sport, about the competitive stuff. I had no idea. And I often say the absolute best thing that ever happened to me was being completely ignorant about it, because, if I had been a football dad, I'd been the worst football dad on the planet. I would, I know everything better than everybody, and I know everything. Let me correct the coach and the ref and everybody.
Oh,
I'd be the worst. So praise God, he got a sport that Jim didn't even know was a sport. You know what I mean? So it was probably the best thing that ever happened to our relationship.
Awesome.
Anyway, but then then we had to learn about the sport, and the culture shock that came around was so after 2 years, at age 7.5, he came up with the idea that he wanted to compete. Right? They were having a competition. He wanted to compete. I was concerned about safety. I was concerned about his sportsmanship. How is he going to handle losing?
Right.
Because he's so high strung. And both were very, very pleasant surprises. His first competition couldn't have been more safe, and he won 2 matches and he lost the third one. And the kid tapped him out, and I'm sitting there at the side of the mat. I can remember thinking, okay, here's the moment of truth. Let's see how he handles this. And he comes off the mat, big smile, and I said, okay, what did we learn? He said, we learned competing is fun. I was like, holy shit, that's the right answer. Excuse my French,
Fine.
but so after that, everything was great. So he started competing a lot. He wanted to compete all the time. So back then there was no such thing as smooth comp. You had to you had to rely on your professor for, hey, where's the competitions? What website should I be checking? What should I be doing? And I had real hard communication problems with where he was training. Couldn't get answers. The professor wouldn't give him private lessons. I had to go to other gyms to get private lessons. I didn't even know private lessons were a thing until I saw there was a group of kids that he was competing with, and they were all staying in the same pack. They were progressing at about the same progression rate from competition to competition, but one kid was like outpacing the other ones. And I finally started asking, what's he doing? And they're like, oh, he's taking private lessons. What's that? I didn't know. Right. So I started talking to like-minded parents at the competitions, because one thing that happens is if you go to a lot of competitions, you'll start to see the same people over and over again. You ever notice that? And so then you start talking to the people from other gyms and whatnot. And long story short is that's what prompted me to start my first Facebook group. The first Facebook group that I started was the 757 BJJ Kids, which was people for the local Hampton Roads area where we live, Virginia Beach, Norfolk, just so that we could communicate, because I was getting super frustrated that the entire communication of this entire sport was being bottlenecked by 5 or 6 gym owners that were very bad at communicating. You see what I'm saying? And I'm a business owner, so I see things in terms of systems. And I was like, this system's broken.
Yeah.
We will now fix the system, And so I ruffled some feathers doing that. But the funny part is now all the gym owners in the area think I'm fantastic, because they thought that I was going to be posting stuff about this gym's better than that gym, or this is what's wrong with this gym. And that wasn't it at all. It was just, let's get the parents communicating, and the best way to do that is let's talk about our kids, and let's talk about everything that was positive about the kids. And so I am very, very strict about it. Has to be positive. If there's something negative on that page, it gets deleted, so and if somebody shows their rear end on that page, they get blocked, because I don't care. And that led to your, that leads to the other Facebook group that you talked about too. We'll get to that in a little bit, but the biggest culture shock, though, was the fact that, and this is really unique, the coach, the professor, is not the general manager of the team here, of your child, okay? The coach, like in traditional youth teams, you've got a coach and the team provides everything. It provides the uniforms, provides the transportation, provides the schedules, tells you where we're going to compete, tells you everything. And my parents would just drop me off, and then, I might get on a
Yeah.
bus and go halfway. They were like, whatever, it's daycare, it's football, it's baseball, we don't care. And not in this sport. And this sport, the parent's the general manager,
Right. Yep.
and I'm a general contractor by profession, so I sort of understood this pretty quickly. Whereas, if I'm building a house, all right, I've got the blueprint, I have the vision of the house, and then I hire specialty contractors. Like I hire a plumber, I hire an electrician, right? And so very quickly, I saw the professor as the specialty contractor. You're here to teach my kids jujitsu, right? But here's what you're not helping me with. You're not telling me where the competitions are. You're not helping me with the uniforms. You're not helping me with any of this stuff. And so, okay, I got to go get educated, because if I'm going to manage my kid, good Lord, I mean, just the laundry alone will kill you,
I know.
right?
Every
So
day.
my wife is over there going. My wife has this. She has this production system going on where she's got geese stacked up. She's like, okay, I need you to build a shelf here. I need a shelf here. I need a shelf here for this. So, she's got geese coming in, geese coming out. I mean, it's like,
it's cool, man. And you're a contractor, so you can build those shelves.
Yeah, well, right. I was like, call my guys in here and say, no, actually, I put that shelf in, and I am not. I'm an engineer by trade. I mean, by education. So I am not the guy you want building the stuff. I usually have my guys for that, but I put that shelf up myself, because I was like, I'll be embarrassed to ask my guys to do this, So I did it, but it was funny. But so anyway, yeah, that was a big culture shock. And then the next big culture shock, I wrote some notes here, but I was like, he went and made friends. He was making friends with other gyms, and at 10 years old, he wanted to move to Diego's. He begged me to move to Diego's because that's where all the competitive kids were moving to. And that was okay. So this is a very interesting phenomenon that I see repeated over and over and over and over and over again. What happens is you have a gym, and it's functioning well. The professor's great, everything's great, and then you have one kid or two kids, a very small amount, that really want to compete. Okay. And they want to compete all the time. And they become obsessed about competing, and they become very competitive, and they get very successful at it. And what happens is that kid plateaus out in a classroom, okay, or in a class. And if he's not taking private lessons or something like that, he's going to plateau out. And I mean, I've seen this. I can name probably 10 kids this has happened to in 10 different schools up and down the East Coast that I personally know. So what happens is the parent goes to the professor, and says, hey, what are we going to do to keep my kid progressing, because he's plateauing? And the professor basically is looking at one kid versus a class of 40 and has to make a financial decision. You see what I'm saying? Yeah. I have to be more loyal to these 40 kids than the one kid. And this becomes a conflict. Okay. And and every single situation that I personally know about leads to the kid leaving the gym, seeking and they usually go to a smaller gym where they can get more personalized attention. Okay. So I'm not saying it's right. I'm just saying, boy, I've seen this repeat itself over and over again. It was the first time for us, but then as you start growing in the sport and you start seeing other kids go through it and other kids come up, you're like, oh, what happened to that kid? Well, he left that gym. Well, what happened to that kid? Well, he left that gym. And you're like, oh, I'm seeing this over and over and over again, right? I don't know the solution to it. I'd have a hard time counseling any gym owner on that, because I'm a businessman and I understand 40 kids or more than one kid. I mean, every business owner has two bad habits he's trying to maintain, right? Eating and living indoors, right? So those are the two things that he's got to keep focused on. But it leads to sometimes hurt feelings and bad blood. And I don't know the solution. I don't know. I knew what the right move for us was. Right move for us was moving to Diego's,
Yeah.
and Diego's was very, very small at the time. There was only a couple kids there, and then the top kids from the whole area moved to Diego's because they all had the same feeling that we did. And so you had a core of extremely talented kids that were having every single class was like a small group session with Professor Diego.
Cool.
So they got so good so
Yeah.
fast because they're training with the top kids and they're having and one-on-one. You know what I'm saying? And that was the team that went, and his first team he took to Pans that basically just swept everything.
Pretty cool.
So, I mean, you know, they came back with so many gold medals, but you know, we kid about it that was the dream team, you know, but because those guys came from, you know, they came from all these different places. But the other big culture shock was, and I talk about, I don't use this in a disrespectful term. I don't, but this is when I got involved in jiu-jitsu competition. I had what I will now term as soccer mom mentality.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
No, that's okay.
Okay.
I know exactly what that is too.
Right. And let me explain what I feel that means. The competition, remember, I came up with traditional sports, baseball, basketball, football. So therefore, the competition on the weekend was winning that competition was everything was important. There's nothing else more important than winning, right? Well, why is that? Well, the reason that is because you have to have a win-loss record to get to the playoffs.
Right.
You have to get to the playoffs to play for the championship. And you have a set season, right? So this is a finite amount of time. You only have so many weekends, right. and your win-loss record determines whether you go to the playoffs and determines whether you're successful or not. Okay, well, if you go into jiu-jitsu with that mentality, how does that translate to these local competitions around here? Well, on a toxic level, that translates into parents putting too much pressure on their kids, parents sandbagging, parents making their kids cut weight, parents, you've seen it all, right? You've seen it all. That's where that mentality comes from. Because the parents have that paradigm of winning is everything. And I did too. I wasn't sandbagging. I wasn't doing any of that stuff. But you know like that there's a very fine line there. We're talking about the yeah. We gotta win, right? So, you're not winning, you're losing. And I'll tell this story. So, our other professor, he's still a great guy. He's still and he's very, very close with Logan. Logan goes over and trains with him from time to time. He's a great guy. I respect his business. Okay. But his business did not include coming to all the competitions that Logan was doing, right? Even if they were here local. We joined Diego's, and it just so happened that the very first competition that was went after we joined Diego's was a U.S. grappling. They're not even around anymore. They were the best competition in Virginia, North Carolina, and I will die on that hill. All right, all right. In Raleigh, they were in Raleigh. It was in Raleigh, which is 3.5 hours away from our house.
Okay.
So we showed up at Raleigh, and I didn't expect Diego to be there because, I mean, our other professor wouldn't even cross the street for a competition, right? All of a sudden, Diego comes walking in. I'm like, what the heck are you doing here? He's like, you're here, I'm here. And we're like, oh, wow. You know, so that was like, okay, that was different.
So nice.
And then here comes the big paradigm shift. Diego watches Logan win the no-gi. The no-gi went first. And he submitted every kid and won gold. And Diego and Logan leave. They go walking somewhere, and I'm just sitting around because, you know, I'm used to them. But, you know, they just, you know, Logan is basically perpetually lost until his match time. And then they come back, and Diego goes, I moved him up 2 weight classes. I'm like, what? And he goes, Jim, he says, we're here to win championships. He is getting nothing out of this. He goes, we have to get better at every single competition. He goes, he is not improving here. I went over and told the refs, my kid is too good for your kids. Move him up 2 weight classes.
Nice.
Right? And I had a panic attack.
Yeah.
The protective
Yeah.
parents, like, yeah, they're gonna rip his arms off. He's gonna die, right? What are you doing, you idiot? And he had some really, really tough matches. He won, and he won gold. But from that day forward, that paradigm shift of we are not here to win, we are here to improve.
Mm-hmm.
And so therefore, we're going to move him up weight class, we're going to move him up belt rank, we're going to move him up age range, we're going to move him up every single chance we
That's
can,
awesome.
because winning doesn't matter. The only thing that matters is improving, because the goal is, for Diego, it was the Pans Championship. That was like our Super Bowl. So we're building up for a year for that competition. And here's the thing. You walk into Pans, your win-loss record doesn't matter.
Right.
You can have a kid walk in the door that's 0 wins, 357 losses, and beat everybody and take the gold.
Right.
Right? So who cares? And I've seen plenty of kids walk into there that have been coddled, that they think they're Billy Badass because they beat everybody in Naga, and they beat everybody at Grappling Industries, and they beat everybody in New Breed, and they're all, and their daddy is running around going, my kid's a beast, and he walks into Pans and gets stuck in the first match.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, it's a new game around here, dude. You know what I'm saying? So you've got to, and I know I'm getting a little animated here, but I'm passionate about this because it was it was like stepping on a rake for me, pow, right in the face. Okay. All right. And so this is one of the biggest things that I see parents don't get, and I believe it's because they're coming from a traditional sports background, and they don't see that jiu-jitsu is much more like gymnastics. Okay? And here's why I mean that. Gymnastics is a skill. Think of somebody in gymnastics. They start off, and year after year after year, they don't lose the previous year. They're building a skill on top of another skill on top of another skill. So they're pursuing the mastery of skills, right? Whereas when I was in football, at the end of the year, the end of the season, you flip the Etch-a-Sketch, you shook it, and start over again because you had a whole new team the next year. There's no building.
Right.
It's that 1 year, we're done, and then come back the next year. So jiu-jitsu is more of a continuum that doesn't stop.
Yeah.
So you got to begin with the end in mind. And then my passion growing up was not sports, it was music. And so I also related to the mastery of a skill and the difference between jiu-jitsu and stuff like that as, this is sort of like playing a musical instrument. We still go to the class. I would go to band class in high school. But you only got so good in band class because there were so many people in the band. You couldn't get any better unless you went and started taking private lessons for your instrument. You see what I'm saying? So I can only get so good in band class. I have to go to a guy to teach me. Okay, I was a drummer. All right, Jim, let's drill on this drum. Let me teach you different rudiments and all these things like that. So I was like, oh, well, that clicked for me. Logan, after a certain level, could only get so good in the class. We're going to have to go get private lessons if we really want to try to achieve this mastery of skills at this level. Does that make sense at all?
It does. I actually didn't even think of it because I know jiu-jitsu doesn't have like a season,
right.
After jiu-jitsu is like we still go all the time, there's no stop.
Right. It's a continuum.
Yeah. So it makes a lot of sense.
So that's the way it was organized. I had to organize it in my head to get my head around it. I'm sure different people will think about it different ways. And I'm not saying I'm right. I'm just saying that's how I had to organize it in my head.
No, that's cool.
The bag of cats that is my head.
Yours is cats. No. Yeah. That's cool. All right. So now we're on 2. So I know you kind of touched on this with your 757 Facebook group. But so what motivated you to start the page or like expand the page out, I guess?
All right, so there's actually two groups, and the first one was the 757 group, and that went really, really
Mhm.
well. And then another jujitsu parent down in North Carolina by the name of Hank Hanna, his son's Hurricane Hank or Hurricane Hanna,
Oh, cool.
um, that great guy, and he was getting so frustrated. We knew each other casually from
Mm-hmm.
Pans, but he was getting so frustrating seeing all these parents getting disqualified and having all these problems with their kids at Pans because their professors
Oh, we're
were either
communicating. Yeah.
ignorant. Yeah, they weren't communicating. They were ignorant on the rules. They didn't care about Pans. They didn't care about. I mean, I've seen it all.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen it all. And so Hank was like, dude, we got to do something. This is terrible. Let's put together a group that so that we can answer these IBJJF
Yeah.
questions and we can talk to these parents because for whatever reason the parents aren't reading the rules, the parents don't want to communicate, whatever. So he put the group together. He launched a group. It was his
Oh, nice.
brainchild. And everything. And then after it kind of got up and running, he asked if I would help be an admin on the page, and so I did. And that group has really
Yeah.
taken off. It's now 3 times the size of the little local group that I have. But you would expect that it's national.
Right.
But there was a time there where it hit a curve where it was like he's done something kind of unique with the group. Now, if I can tell anybody this, please, if you don't answer all the questions,
Yes.
you do not get accepted to the group,
Yeah.
right? And now we've got 2,500 people in the group, but I bet you 2,500 people have been denied access to the group because they just won't answer the
Right.
questions. And I'm like, well, why would you apply? Because you get, as the admin, you get this thing that comes in and says, hey, this person is requesting access to the
Mm-hmm.
group. And some people don't answer any questions. Some people only answer half the questions, and I'm like, so I message Hank. I'm like, Hank, what do you want to do with this? He's like, dude, if they ain't smart enough to answer the questions, they don't need to be in a group. I'm like, okay, I agree. And every time I get frustrated that people aren't answering the questions, I look at the group membership and I go, well, 2,500 people were smart enough to answer the questions, so they can't be that hard,
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
so y'all were smart enough to figure them out, I mean, it's
And
like,
we're like,
yes, I accept the group rules. My kid does jujitsu. I mean, it's not the SAT
right.
here.
It's like three
So,
questions.
yeah, I know it's so simple, and I mean, and it's like a drop down, yes or
Right.
no. Come
Yeah.
on, man. So, you're just mailing it in if you didn't answer the questions.
Yeah.
But honestly, though, sometimes though, what we did find out was is if you're in the group and you send an invite to somebody outside of the group, right? So like another jujitsu mom, and you send that invite to her, it shows up in our admin as this person requested access, and she doesn't even know she got the invite.
Oh, okay.
Right? So because I had this, so the way we run the group is if they don't answer the questions, we just he set up the auto bot to the application remains active for a certain amount of time, and then if the questions aren't answered, it gets kicked out automatically. So we just let it do that because some people actually do come in and answer the questions. So I've had it be denied. So it got kicked out, and then I knew the person that got invited. So they sent me a private message saying, "Hey, I noticed you're an admin on this group that I just got denied from, and I didn't even know that I applied to it.
Yeah.
What is this all about?" And I was like, "Hey, just reapply, just answer the questions." Oh, okay, and everything's cool,
Yeah.
But I sometimes wonder about that.
Like, how are
So
you
I'm like,
still
going,
walking
man, I hope.
around? No.
Yeah, I know. Well, I'm just like going, man, I hope we're not pissing off half the jujitsu community. Like,
No.
they're getting kicked out of a group they didn't even know existed,
No.
So, but
No, I
yeah,
think
so,
it's a great resource for like newbie parents especially who are kind of
yeah,
unsure about, because I had a lot of questions um even when we first started, and so knowing about like what was going to be legal at IBJJF or whatnot, it's super
right.
important to know these things. So
Especially with
yep.
IBJJF. I mean, they're so restrictive and they're so unrepentant and they do not care. If you don't know the rules, they don't
Right.
care. And the other local tournaments are great.
Mm-hmm.
And they'll work with you, and they'll they understand that most of the parents are newbies. But IBJJF feels like if you're there, they're not giving you any advantage over somebody that's there for 10 days,
Right.
10 minutes, or 10 years. You know, so you got to know the
Mm-hmm.
rules. And the one question that we get, oh my God, before PANS last year, every single day we would get the same question in the group. 47 people would answer it. And then we would get the same question the next day in the group. And it was always, how much leniency do they have on weigh-ins at IBJJF PANS? You know, and they're like, dude, not 1 ounce. The next day, and then the parents would get furious. They're like, well, I'm not telling my kid to cut weight. Fine, move him up a weight
Yeah.
class. This isn't rocket science, you know.
Yeah.
And then the very next day, it's almost like at one point me and Hank were like, are these parents intentionally copying, pasting the same question and sending it? Hey, now you ask it this time. You know, you ask it this time, just to mess with us, because this is insane. Every single day, the same
Yeah.
question. And we were just like, Lord mercy, I can't even do it anymore, you know. So anyway, it's just funny stuff that you find out on parents' Facebook
Yeah,
groups.
parents are wild.
So.
Yeah.
They all have the best of intentions,
Totally.
but they're all coming from a different background, a different
Right.
culture, a different. When I say culture, I don't mean
Like
Filipinos,
Filipinos.
he's
Yeah.
Japanese. No, yeah, I'm not talking about. Yeah, and by the way, our whole gym is Filipinos. Logan's the one white
Yeah.
kid. No, I'm talking about you take 3 or 4 different gyms, okay, and one's run by a former wrestler, one's run by a Brazilian,
Right.
and one's run by a former cop that is only focused on self-defense.
Right.
You've got 3 radically different cultures, right? And if you've ever been around a wrestling thing, the wrestling culture is so different than the jiu-jitsu culture. My son wrestles, and I'm like, I go to a jiu-jitsu match, and I feel like I'm around reasonably intelligent people that have a basic understanding of grappling and are interested in the technical aspects of the sport, right? Even I don't care if it's a jiu-jitsu mom, jiu-jitsu dad, I don't care who it is. They seem, for the most part, even if they're new, they're interested and willing to learn. I go to my kids' wrestling thing. I'm like, what is? I feel like I'm in some redneck thing in the back of the trailer park with large margin or friends. It's just, dude, it is crazy. I mean, I'm like, I feel like we're in a biker gang or something. It's like the culture is so different. So if you take somebody coming from that wrestling culture, they might be great at jiu-jitsu, but that's a completely different culture than somebody coming from somewhere else. I don't know. I'm not trying to put wrestling down. I love wrestling. My son wrestles, but it's a different culture.
For sure. Yeah, we did wrestling a little bit, and the parents are like, we can't coach our kids, in jiu-jitsu, like, or else your coach or your professor will look at you like,
Yeah.
But you got parents over here screaming and telling their kid what to do from the sides, and I'm like,
you have to expect them to throw a bottle out onto the mat, and what was really funny is one of our jiu-jitsu kids has gone on. He's playing high school soccer now, and I get texts from his dad, and he's like, dude, I thought jiu-jitsu parents were crazy. These people need to be all locked up. These soccer parents are completely insane, So I was like, I wouldn't know, dude.
So how would you describe your involvement as a parent from when your son first started jiu-jitsu to now?
Oh, Lord mercy. Well, let's. So he first started jiu-jitsu when he was 5.5 years old.
Okay.
And now he's 16. So lots of things have changed. Like before I could, hit him, and now I'm afraid to, my number one parenting tool, physical intimidation's gone. I'm just kidding. That's a joke. Don't write the,
like, oh my gosh,
the parenting groups.
Guy.
I know he's crazy. Yeah. Okay. So he and I have always had, we've always had very purposeful discussions about his goals and what he's willing to do to get there. So it's always about, okay, what are we trying to do? you know, here's the calendar. Here's the next thing. What do you want to do? What do you, and then the next question is obviously, all right, what are you willing to do to get there,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because it has to be for me and him. It has to be his decision because I'm not going to drag someone kicking and screaming to success. They have to be
Right.
self-driven. That's just, I kid him all the time. I'm too old. Right? I'm too old to try to cattle prod you into something. I'm not trying to push you into something. This has to be on
Right.
you. Now, once we have a discussion on that and we have an understanding, then I will hold him accountable to it.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm
Mm-hmm.
saying? Because kids get distracted from the goal. So
For sure.
if he starts to get distracted, I'll just say, hey, are we resetting the goal? Because I thought we said we were going to do this, and if we're not going to do that, it's fine with me. I got plenty. He knows I'm a very, very busy person running a couple businesses and stuff like that. So I'm like, dude, I got plenty of places to be.
Right.
If you don't need me, right? So if you don't need my time, we'll go somewhere, or we'll be somewhere else. It was like, it's kind of like after COVID, when everything shut down during COVID, I couldn't believe after a certain amount of time how much money was in my account because I was like, wow, we were really spending a lot of money on this thing, And so I was telling Logan after COVID started back, the restrictions dropped. I was like, if you don't feel the need to compete all up and down the East Coast every single week, that would be fine with
Right.
me. If you wanted to. And he's, Dad, that's crazy. We got to train, man. We got to compete. What are you talking about? And I was like, well, because we could do a lot of other cool stuff with all this money laying
Right.
around, But yeah, he wasn't happy. But he's very, very self-driven. If it was up to him, he'd train every day. And in the summertime, he has me drop him off at the gym in the morning, and he is there literally all day.
Wow.
He does the morning class. He does the afternoon class. He does the evening class, and in the meantime, he'll drill with his main drilling partner. He'll take an Uber to the gym and lift, and then come back. He'll sleep on the mat.
Wow.
I mean, he's been doing this for years. I mean, and he cannot stand when school's back in session again because it's ruining his
Oh my
jujitsu training.
goodness. That's so funny.
So yeah, he's like, I gotta go from training 3 times a day down to just one. This is crap. So he's like, Dad, and he was the kid when he was 10 or 11 years old that was trying to tell me, Dad, I need to be homeschooled online so I have more time to train.
Oh,
I mean,
wow.
because he had a couple friends that were doing
Right.
that, and I was like, listen, dude, I'm all about some jujitsu, but your education is number
Mm-hmm.
one, and for you, I don't feel that's the best path to go. But for other people, it might be, but for him, no. So I'm glad we never compromised on. And I'm not saying that homeschooling is compromising. I mean, for some people, I had to be homeschooled from time to time, or at least home supplemented, because in the military, every time we moved, it seems like I was behind in another
Mm-hmm.
subject. So thankfully, my mother was a
Oh,
teacher,
nice.
and so she was like, okay, well, now we're trying to catch up on math because this school's more advanced than the one over here, and now we're trying to catch up on something else. So I respect homeschooling. Please, all you homeschooling parents, do not send me hateful stuff that I don't. But my wife's a teacher, and my mother was a teacher, so I nothing but respect for teachers.
Right.
But
Especially this
let's
day and
see.
age.
Lord, yeah, I think everybody got a really good appreciation during COVID,
Yes.
didn't they?
Yes.
But I've always told him that I will only work as hard as he
Mm-hmm.
does. I said, I'm not going to work harder than you. So I'll match your effort and you'll never outwork me. And so when I'm driving, when he was younger, I'm like, look, if I'm driving, you're either need to, you're watching videos. But once he was old enough, and the problem is, guys, is I'm talking about 10 years of evolution.
Mm-hmm.
So, you're going from a time when he was 5 to all he wanted to do was go to the gym to be with his
Mm-hmm.
friends, to a time when he was 9, where he could, when he was 8 or 9, he could care less about what his teammates were doing on the mat at a competition. He was too busy running around playing grab ass with them. You know, I mean, he was just there to have fun, right? To 11, and all of a sudden now he's coaching his teammates, you know, and he's intensely interested in what's going on. So there's been an evolution, and there was a time that he could care less about what a video was, you know, or anything like that. And so, you know, but then all of a sudden he was watching videos. So I was like, look, if I'm driving, you're studying. So you're either studying schoolwork while we're driving, because we have a 1-hour drive each way, or you're studying jujitsu, because if I'm working, you're working. Okay. And if I'm driving, you're working, you know. So that was kind of sort of an understanding that this is a two-way street, dude. This ain't a, but you can't do that with a 6-year-old, you know. So everything's got to be taken in context, you know.
Yeah.
But that's, I don't know. I'm rambling too much.
Okay.
But
I like it.
That's sort of how we run our stuff, and run each other, because we definitely, and maybe this is a good point for me to, this is and this came up in another question, but if I could give any advice to anybody, I would say this topic is the biggest pain in the butt has been the biggest blessing for me and my son, and that is when we changed. You gotta understand, our school that we were going to, the gym that we were going to, is right up the street from my house. And then to get to Diego's, I have to drive through a bridge tunnel, literally underwater.
Underwater scary one. Yep.
Okay. Yep. The only scary part about it is everybody wants to stop in it. Now you're stuck in it every time, right? You know, and we have to drive an hour each way under the water twice and everything just to go to school, just to go to Diego's gym. And you would think, oh my God, I ain't doing that. Yeah, right. Yeah, I need to be committed. But the biggest thing was, I had learned earlier in life that when I was training employees, if they were in the car with me, to turn off the radio. Okay, because when the radio's on, nobody's talking. Right? So I had learned that to build the relationships and maximize that car time with my employees, it was keep the music off so people talk. So I said, all right, well, if I'm driving an hour each way with my kid, we're not playing any music. And the conversations that we have had driving to and from Diego's, 2 hours every single day in the car for weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks, has built this entire unique relationship that I have with my son. And and sometimes you drive in silence and nothing happens, right? And sometimes you drive 2 hours and we're both in silence, and then the last 10 minutes before we get home, he brings up some random question that sparked something, but you know, it was only 10 minutes of this gem, but that conversation could have never been forced. You had to wait 2 hours of silence to get to that 10 minutes. But you had to have space for it to occur. Does that make sense? So you're going to be driving to a lot of competitions if you do this sport, people out there. Turn off the radio. Let the kids talk. Oh, but all they do is sleep. They'll wake up sooner or later, right? And just have space. Create the space. Create the environment that the conversations can happen. You can't force them to happen. You don't know when they're going to happen, but I can tell you if the environment is such that something else is crowding it, like my favorite music, or my podcast or whatever, it's not going to happen. So that's been the biggest blessing. Seriously, I can't even tell you the things that have come out of those drives.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
So how do you encourage your son after a rough loss or a rough tournament?
I shut up.
Yeah.
All right. So every kid. This is a. We're gonna file this under every kid is different,
Yep.
right? My kid doesn't want to hear
Right.
anything. All right. He wants to be in his thoughts. He does not want to hear what he did right. He does. I've tried all of these. I've tried all of these. These are like landmines. Every single one of them blew my leg off. Right.
Oh.
He doesn't want to hear about what he did right.
Oh.
He doesn't want to hear that he did a good
Right.
job. He doesn't want to hear about what he did wrong. He doesn't want to hear he could have done better. He needs me to shut up. That's what he needs, right? And silence is loud. Okay.
Yeah.
And I have to wait. I have to be disciplined enough to wait until he's ready to talk. That might be hours and that might be days. Okay. But for my son, once he initiates a conversation, then I've learned he's basically okay to talk about it. He might want to talk about jujitsu. He might want to talk about the match. He might start talking about something that has nothing to do with it. But until that happens, it's best just to leave him alone. And if I'm just one of those people that I just can't, I'm chewing through my lip, just not say anything. I've learned the absolute best thing for me to say if I have to say something is, I love to watch you do jujitsu.
Oh, that's super sweet.
That's the best thing that I could say if I have to say something. The best thing for me to say is nothing, right? So, but every kid's different.
Right.
Different kids are different ways. He's a weirdo, so he'd say the same thing if he was sitting here next to me. But he's unique, but I've learned how to deal with his uniqueness from all those hours in the car. So
cool. So, do you have any common rituals that you do to prepare or for a competition?
no, I mean the joke was besides yelling at each other about where your uniform
Yeah.
is, the common rituals that we would have were always. I had a checklist. So I came up in the Air Force, and we always had the pre-flight checklist. So I had this checklist, and I laminated it. And we would get in the car, and I'm like, "Do you have your belt?" Yes. I don't believe you. Show it to me. And so I got to this thing. The checklist was I would read it, and he would have to show it to me because we'd get there. Oh, I don't have my belt. You said you had it. I thought I did. No. So, do you have your belt? Check. Do you have your, gi top? Check. Do you have your gi pants? That was a layering curve. Don't ask if he has his gi. It has every single thing on the checklist. So, yes, that was a checklist born from a lot of pain.
I have a son,
but
what age do they bring all their things?
My wife would tell you that I'm 55 and it hasn't helped, So
my son is 10,
but
and I'm like,
yeah, that's right. That's the best. Yeah, get yourself a checklist and go down it every time.
I mean, I forgot my gi pants this week for jiu-jitsu. I was like, oh, and I went to my coach. I was like, can I borrow some pants?
Yep. Yep. We
so I mean,
I can't tell. There's someone. If Logan will tell you, if you want to see my dad light off, let me tell him that I've got everything that I need, and then leave the house and go up the street, and before we get to the end of the block, say, "Oh, I need to get this," and watch my dad just lose his mind, So,
that's funny.
but as far as big competitions go, like pans or whatnot, the smaller competitions to us now, it was with the smaller competitions. The main thing was keeping everything the same as every other day.
Right.
Don't do anything special, right? Keep it the same as every other day. Otherwise, it just adds unneeded stress.
Yeah.
And the kids will pick up on the stress that you project.
Yep.
As a parent, you're going to be stressed out to the max, so you better fake it, right? You better stone face, baby, right? And don't be trying to tell them. God, don't start teaching them a bunch of stuff right during their warm up to the competition. I see all these with these last minute things, dude, they're not going to remember any
Right.
of that. Okay. They either know it or they
Right.
don't. Let them roll. And whatever you do, don't try to correct them after the match either. Just, that's what the video's for. That's for next week.
Right.
Okay. But as far as pans go, which is what I would consider a big competition, the day we basically plan out every day that we're going to be there, what we're going to do, when we're going to do it. It's just very, very disciplined. The day of the competition, what we're going to do, what time we're going to get up, what time we're going to eat, and we basically brief it and come to an understanding of it together, so that the day of, we're not getting into these discussions about, no, I don't want to eat now, I want to eat later. No, I want to eat it, I don't want to. No, dude, this is already
Right.
pre-negotiated. You know what I'm
Right.
saying? So I don't want any of that crap with him, because he's Mr. I'll change everything at the last minute, and then Dad starts strangling you
Yes.
before pans, and then you don't win pans because you're dead,
Aw.
right? So, so no, I mean, we're so tight that we will get on each other pretty strong, about things. So it's this routine that
Right.
we've developed of, okay, this is how we're going to do it. We're coming to an understanding, okay? But it eliminates
Surprises.
it
Yeah.
eliminates this,
Yeah.
and it eliminates decisions the day of.
Oh, okay.
He's got enough on his mind. We don't need to be making any
Right.
decisions. We need to reduce the number of decisions that we're making the
Right.
day of. So that's, and then now that he's 15, and now he's 16, turned 16 last week.
Oh, happy birthday.
Thanks. Now he's really into his music. Once he gets in the bullpen and everything
Yeah.
like that, he wants his headphones
Right.
on, and he's listening to that stuff that rots your brain out that I can't
Oh.
stand. That doesn't even qualify
Yeah.
as music to me. So, but let him listen to what he wants to listen to. This is his thing, and because this is another thing that I taught him very young, and he's carried it very strongly through. And I told him, I said, listen, in your entire life, this is when he was 6. I said, everybody's telling you what to do. I said, as a matter of fact, you don't have a choice of what you can do in anything in your life. We tell you when to wake up. We tell you when to go to sleep. We tell you at school, they tell you everything. You have no decisions except one place. When you're on that mat in a competition, you're the boss. You are the boss on the mat. All right. Now you can choose to listen to your coach, or you can decide not to listen to your coach. You can choose to listen to your people yelling at you and tell you what to do, or you can choose not to. I said, it doesn't matter, because that's the one place that you're the boss. Okay. And I used to say before every competition, Logan, who's the boss on the mat? I am. Right. So he fell in love with that.
That's
that
cute.
was his thing. And so you ask him at 16 years old, when it comes time to competition, he's in charge. I'm in charge of me, and I make my own decisions, and I own my own decisions, and I own my wins, and I own my losses. I own everything. And that's the beautiful thing about this sport, is it breeds accountability. There's no passing the buck. Right? There's no, oh, my teammate didn't do that good, or, oh, I got robbed by the ref, and then I got. Hey, the level of personal accountability that breeds into these kids is just amazing to me. I wish I had it as a kid. That's the beautiful thing about the sport.
For sure.
One of the beautiful things. But anyway, that kind of answers the question of pre-game ritual, right? So.
And how is your relationship with other like jiu-jitsu families compared to like non-jiu-jitsu families?
Well, this is kind of interesting, and I think I thought about this when you sent me that question. I thought about this because I had him so late in life. I was a bunch of relationships, right? I had a bunch of professional relationships. I had relationships in my job, in my business, and so we still maintained a lot of relationships. It's just that with the jiu-jitsu family, we talk about jujitsu, and we've learned if we talk about jujitsu with our other friends, they roll their eyes. You know what I mean? They don't want to.
They call it Mexican ground karate.
yeah. They're like, not that thing again, right? And and they'll always ask, how's Logan doing that karate thing? And I don't even correct them anymore. I'm just like, he's great. Thank you for asking. But yeah, so my wife's got friends at her thing. So we're people would say I'm obsessed and I'm narrowly focused, but at the same time, I think I'm pretty balanced as far as my relationships, because I had a bunch of relationships before this whole goofiness started.
Okay.
But I don't know. I mean, you definitely feel a tighter kinship with the families whose kids are going through the same thing your kids are.
Yeah.
You're always with them, and nobody understands us, because we're in this weird sport, and nobody, you have to commiserate with somebody, My kid's crazy. My kid's crazy too. So, so, and my parents think I'm, we're doing MMA, that kind of, you have those conversations. So.
Yeah. Okay. So, your son is a world champ, or international champion. So, and he does the private lessons, correct? And he does the video breakdown commentary. He did my daughter's, which I thought was pretty cool. And how would you describe his development in maturity?
Well, don't talk to his mother, because she says he's the most immature person. But she says the same thing about me, so
like, he got it from somewhere.
So, well, then I guess you could make the argument he's as mature as a 55-year-old. Right? No, this is a topic that I see young parents of young kids get very impatient with. Okay, I talk to a lot of when I say young parents, let's talk about parents that are in their 20s and their 30s, and they're frustrated with their kid who's 7, 8, 9, 10, because they're not focused enough. They won't watch they're not serious enough. They're not training enough. They're not watching the videos. They're not. And okay, here's what I can tell them. If my hindsight can be their foresight, the trick is to be able to be focused in the moment, but you have to maintain them in a long-term context. Okay. And so the saying that we usually use is, when in doubt, zoom out. Will this matter in 6 months? Will it matter in 2 years? Will it matter in 5 years? Right. And through his jiu-jitsu journey, I try to tell these parents, listen, my son was no different than your kid. In fact, your kid might be farther ahead than where my kid was. And I try to tell them, look, there's little jumps in his maturity level along the way that would happen overnight. So, and I kind of discussed this already, but at 5 to 8, he just wanted to go to class to have friends with his friends. From 8 to 9 years old, he could care less what was going on the mat, during a competition. And at 9, I saw his first glimpse of the strategy coming in, right? Which was a pretty wild story, but we probably don't have time for it. One of the big breakthroughs was, my wife is an educator, right? She's got her master's in education. And she told me, and it was Logan, I think Logan was about 9 at the time, or 8. And she said, now understand, my wife is not his mother. Okay. And she said, listen, you're going to see a big change in Logan's jiu-jitsu game between the ages of 9 and 10. I'm like, she doesn't know anything about jiu-jitsu. I'm like, why do you say that? She says, because in education, we call the age of 10 the age of reason. He says, and it's when the human brain starts to change from seeing everything in their world as black and white, till they start to see the nuance in the grays. Right? The kids go from being, the human brain goes from, the kids go from being checkers players to chess players. Okay? And that's what we saw. We saw him going from a kid that did jiu-jitsu of, I'm in this position, I do this. I'm in this position, I do this. To now he's thinking 3-4 moves ahead, and how he's going to set this guy up to, to fall into this trap. You know what I'm saying? I mean, it's just like the sophistication of his game just jumped, if that makes sense. And kudos to my wife for that insight, because as usual, she was right. So, but that, so that, as far as maturity, that's right. So, the little things would change suddenly, where he didn't want to see the videos of his matches, then he wanted to see them immediately, right? And he didn't want to watch any jiu-jitsu instructionals on YouTube, and then he was watching every single match, live streams from world championships, and I mean, one of the funniest things was at lunchtime. He was watching the Brazilian championships on his phone, and he had the sound on, and his friends are like, "What language
Oh,
is that?"
yeah.
Because they're all yelling at each other in
Yeah.
Brazilian, and he's like, "It's Portuguese," and they're like, "You speak Portuguese?" He goes, "No, but I understand somebody yelling at me in Portuguese about jujitsu because they've been doing it to me for the last 10
Yeah.
years, So he goes, that guy just told that guy to pass his leg over the backside, and, so, the level with maturity, these jumps that have happened have been more like stair steps than a constant curve. You know what I mean? It's like nothing, and all of a sudden, boom, out of nowhere, and then nothing, and then boom. So you can't predict them. They will happen. Everything will happen in time. Just understand that who your kid is right now is not who they're going to be in a year.
For sure.
We as adults don't change. They sure do. Right? So
Yeah.
anyway.
All right.
How? Ooh,
You got it?
sorry. How do you
No, you're
help
good.
keep a balanced life for your son? Some kids love to dance or draw, sing, or play instruments. Are there any other hobbies that Logan enjoys?
Well, from the beginning, the balance was important to us because we always made school the number one
Okay.
priority. So he's always had very high grades. When he was younger, he played other sports, because we wanted him to be, exposed to a bunch of stuff: soccer, gymnastics,
Yes.
t-ball. He swam on a competitive swim team for several years. Now he's into weightlifting. He likes playing video games, hanging out with his friends, and
Nice.
the biggest thing is he now has a serious girlfriend. So he's
Oh.
learning how he has to be accountable to another person in a relationship,
Ah.
and she's ripping him for all the stuff that I want to, and I think it's awesome.
That's funny.
You didn't text me back. Where you been? And all this stuff like that. And he was like, "Dad, I was, and I was like, really?
Really?
I feel like, Claire, send me your Venmo. I'm going to send you $100 for that last.
Good job. Good job.
Yeah.
Yeah, she is, and she is wonderful. I mean, she is a wonderful young lady.
That's awesome.
Does she also train jujitsu?
Yeah. No, she doesn't train jujitsu at all.
Cool.
She doesn't train jujitsu. She doesn't even go to his school. She goes to another school. But man, on the weekends, she will ride with us up to away jujitsu tournaments, and she will be there the entire time. She loves watching him train.
Cool.
She loves watching him compete. She's her picture is all over his Instagram, so she's pretty easy to find. But she's I kid all the time. I'm like, listen, I know these high school romances don't usually work out, and I'm telling my wife this. Do you think if they break up, we can keep her and the other family have him?
Swap out the kids.
Let them have him. We'll keep her.
That's funny.
Because she is wonderful.
Cool.
I don't know what she's doing with him, but
that's really cool.
Love that girl.
Awesome. Whew, I almost fell back in my chair.
Nope.
Yeah. So, what plans are you looking forward to this year?
Well, right now our plans are all on hold
right.
because we are in this purgatory with this hip
Right.
injury. It's been a very frustrating thing. We had plans this year. We were buying our tickets to go to Paris in January for Euros. We were going to Orlando for adult pans and no-gi pans, in California for Worlds, and doing all the ADCC things. But now it's very, very frustrating to us because we're such a planner family, and everything's planned out ahead of time. And everything's on hold right now because you got people in the background. So everything's on hold right now, and it's very frustrating from him. It's very frustrating for us. And we've gone through several MRIs, and the good news is there's nothing structural wrong. It's just we've got to work through it. So he's going to physical therapy. But so there's only one goal in our mind right now, and that's get better.
Yeah.
Because nothing else can happen until that happens. It's affecting his long-term goals because his goal up until this point was he wants to go train with Danaher and those guys in
Oh,
Austin.
uh-huh.
He's had some introductions to some of those guys. He's training with one of them on Monday. The guy's coming here.
Cool.
Luke Griffiths is coming here for a seminar, and I got him a private lesson with
That's
Luke.
awesome.
And so he wants to go to University of Texas
Mhm.
so he can be there in
Right.
Austin and train. And we're like, well, what do we do with this hip
Right.
now? You know, is this hip a short-term thing, a long-term thing? We don't
Yeah.
know. So it's very frustrating right
Aw.
now. But you know what? Such is life.
Right.
You know, we'll get through it and we'll figure it out. And whether he goes to college in Virginia or he goes to college in Texas, one thing's for certain: he's going to college.
Yeah.
So, you know, so, but the private lessons and stuff he's thrown himself into because he can roll with kids in private
Mhm.
lessons without exerting himself, so it doesn't hurt the hip. At the end of the day, it's pretty sore, but it's given him such an outlet for expressing himself on the mat and then getting mat time that he didn't otherwise have when he was hurt. So as a parent, for his emotional and mental health, these private lessons have been the greatest thing ever. I feel like I should be actually paying these parents to let him teach their kids,
Yeah.
you know, because he loves it and he's so passionate about it. And we're traveling to Richmond next weekend just so he can coach a bunch of his private students
cool.
in the
That's
competition.
cool.
So he's so passionate about it.
So cool.
That's awesome.
How can parents support their children without overwhelming them with pressure?
I have no idea.
That's legit. Yeah.
He's always driven this crazy train. You know, when he was younger, people were always like, "Oh, well, Jim is just living vicariously through his
Right.
son, and he's just pushing his son." I was like, and my this one black belt that knew us really well is like, "You obviously have never met Logan."
Yeah.
You know, for you to say that, you have never met this kid.
Yeah.
Because all this kid wants to do is train 24/7.
Cool.
You know, and his dad would be thrilled to sit on the couch. You know,
Yeah. I want to save my money. Yeah.
you know, exactly. I'm like, dude, you don't understand. I'm the biggest homebody in the world.
That's funny.
I have this really, really nice chair that reclines, and my wife brings me a drink, and I just love it, you know. But no, I told him he would never outwork me, and he's held my feet to
That's
that fire.
awesome.
Lord mercy. But so when I see parents that get frustrated, frustration comes from unmet expectations. So if a parent is frustrated, they need to look in the mirror and realize that they're in control of their own expectations, and they need to adjust them accordingly.
Yes.
Okay. And so I think there have to be purposeful discussions, age appropriate. You're not going to have the same discussion with a 6-year-old that you have with a 15-year-old, right? But you gotta have, you know, what are the goals? What are you willing to do to get to those goals? And we've always had a format that we follow. I was taught this format a long time ago, but I've always used it, and it was set the goal, then we're going to develop the plan, then we agree that we're going to work the plan, we're going to expect frustration, and we're going to persevere despite the frustration. So that's the format that we do every single goal that we set, and it works pretty well for us.
Nice. I like it.
Yeah, awesome.
Did you guys want to talk about these miscellaneous topics? I don't even know. Like, so you know what's funny is, so I go over these questions with my husband. He's the one who like generates them in his own brain, and then I'm like, these are all great, and I just copy and paste them. And I'm like, I have no idea what he meant. And I'm like, yeah, no, they look great. You know? Like, so I'm like,
well, you can try them out. We'll see how bad I do.
No, I mean, it's my husband's not even here for me to be like, what did you mean? You know? So,
I know. So, you totally left me hanging, man. You threw me under the bus with these random ass questions, and
oh yeah, how do you pick? So I mean, you've touched on this a little bit, like why you went from your gym down the street to the gym, you know, or to Diego Bispo's Academy.
Yeah.
But like you said, you wanted to, or Logan wanted to compete more, right? So
Yeah. How do you pick a
yeah.
gym? Okay, so let's think about this for a minute. So let's define some variables. So the first variable is let's all agree that unless you came up in jujitsu, you have absolutely no idea what jujitsu
Right.
means.
Yeah.
So so the idea, what are the percentage chances that the first gym that you join is going to be the gym that's perfect for you long term for the rest of your life and the rest of your
Probably
kids'
like
lives? Can we?
50%. Like not even.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's pretty high.
that's really
Yeah.
really optimistic, right? Because I was sitting there thinking maybe 1%, right? So so what's going to happen is let's just think through this. So you're going to join the gym, you're going to start learning about jujitsu, and there's going to be certain things that you like about jujitsu, that you like your kids in jujitsu, that you like about the sport that appeal to you.
Right.
And so now you know a little bit more about it, you're a little bit more sophisticated, and you'll start to realize that different gyms address different aspects of this
Yep.
sport. So what you have to learn is some gyms are competition based. All right, they're focused on the competition. Some gyms are self-defense based. They're focused on just self-defense, which, by the way, let's be honest, has nothing to do with competition.
Yep.
Right? Because if you're on the street and you start baramboloing, you're going to be killed. Yeah. Okay? So some gyms are social club based.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with that. Okay, I think that's important. And then some are kind of more fitness based. So the thing is, so you get involved in jujitsu, and all of a sudden now you start to see all these different gyms with different cultures and different things they're focused on. And I might say, damn, I'm a 55-year-old overweight guy. I think I'd really like to be into the fitness gym, right? And my best friend over here, who all he wants to do is party all day long, he wants, but he was a former wrestler. I'm telling you, he's going to show up he wants to be in the social club gym, right? He wants to have a bunch of friends and get together, work up a sweat, man. Then we're going to go out and drink beer, right? Or whatever they're going to do, right? That's what. And Logan is only going to go one place,
right?
Competition gym. And then we have a very, very close friend of ours who's a black belt, who's a former cop, and everybody in his gym is cops, right? And they're all about self-defense. And if you say IBJJF to them, they'll probably kill you, right? So, because if it can't be yeah. If it can't be applied on the street, they don't want to know about it, okay. Right? They love Logan and they train with Logan, but so you're talking different cultures with different goals, okay? And so you need to find a gym that's in alignment with your goals. And if your goals change, get gyms. There's,
or incorporate both, or So I totally get it.
But so second, then you need to examine the credentials of the main instructor. And now that might apply and be more important in one situation than another. For example, if my goals are fitness or my goals is social club, does it really matter how many world championships the instructors won?
No.
Does it? Yeah. Not really, right? Or if my goal is self-defense on the street, maybe my friend Rashad, who's a cop and a former special forces guy, he might have a different perspective of jiu-jitsu than Diego Bispo, who's the IBJJF specialist, right? Okay, so because if you talk to Rashad, he's like, well, before you shoot that double leg takedown, if you got a gun on you, I'm like, no, we don't have a gun on us, dude. So, but it's a different, completely different thing, So you're not going to hear that in IBJJF gym. But so then I would say visit several gyms, and what you're going to find out is every gym has a different culture. Okay, even among competition gyms, I could name you 5 competition gyms that I know right now, and I could take you into every single one of them, and every single one of them you would feel a different vibe and a different culture. And guess what? If we all had the same opinion, we'd all be after the same woman, right? So you have to find the culture that meets your vibe and your opinion and where you're most comfortable with. So when looking for a gym, those are the things to me that would make the most sense as putting in your criteria. But I would say, to protect from the paralysis of analysis, which some people get, if you want to join jujitsu, put a date on the calendar that you're going to make a decision by. Otherwise, you will be going to a world tour and try to get it perfect and everything like that. So, dude, do your due diligence, but make a decision by this date. Just join one, because you can always switch later if you change your mind. But I can't tell you how many people I'm like, well, I looked at this one and it was like that. And I looked at that one. How long you been looking? 5 years, man.
That's a long time.
So I just want the perfect one,
Oh.
Awesome.
Well,
good.
Thank you so much for being with
you.
us today. It was very insightful, and
100%.
we loved just hearing, people's stories. As you kind of mentioned, every story, every parent, every kid is different, and I think it's just really interesting to hear, everybody's motivations and journeys and everything too. So
yeah, it's very different. Everything's different, and
it's awesome.
I appreciate you guys, asking. You guys are a lot of fun.
Yeah, we try.
And I've enjoyed listening to your podcast.
Awesome. We're silly,
but yeah, I think it's a really cool. I think you're fulfilling a unique niche in the jiu-jitsu community, and that's I think that there's a lot of parents out there that are like, dude, I ain't going to listen to a podcast about Danaher talk about the leverages of how Gordon Ryan defeated Galvao. But they would like some therapy of saying, my kid's doing this jujitsu thing. I need to talk to somebody else that's been through this.
That's totally what we call this. We say it's free therapy. That's so funny.
That's needed. Yes. There's a bigger market need for that than Galvao. I can tell you that right now.
That's awesome. Do you want to plug Logan's Instagram, or will that?
Oh, sure.
Head bigger than it already is. Sorry, Logan.
No, we keep him under wraps. Everybody keep him very humble. No, his Instagram is Logan Hicks BJJ. At Logan Hicks BJJ. Give him a follow. He's we're starting up a YouTube. There's been such a demand for the video breakdowns that he does. That we're probably going to start up a YouTube channel to kind of upload those and share those with more people. I have a big backlog of video requests right now. So many people have sent me videos, and it's me trying to get him to do them because he's trying to balance work and everything else. Girlfriend.
Yeah,
the school. He's like, Dad, I got a project. I don't care about your project. You got to break down this match. So you told me my grades are number one. Don't throw my own words back at me, damn it.
Who told you that?
So we're trying to get the balance. We're trying to get the work-life balance there, but I think that's a very unique thing that he does, and he so much enjoys doing it, and it just flows out of him naturally. And we actually sat around and thought a lot about what can we do. We don't charge any money for it.
That's so nice. I would have paid.
we might in sometime in the future. But we were like, what can we do for our students? What can he do for his students that he wished somebody had done for him? And it was so hard to get the instructors to break down video for him afterwards. And it's so important. So, because that's the height of the learning curve. After a certain age, there's some kids that, they're just like, if he couldn't have done it at 7 or 8 because he would have just been whatever. I don't even know who that is in that video, but at a certain age, it's helpful. So it's been very well received. I don't know where we're going to go with it. We have some ideas, but it all, he's 16 and the big, it depends on everything else is very real. So
totally understand.
Awesome.
It is competition season for us. So if you want to follow Layla's journey for both cheer and jiu-jitsu, all of our listeners can do that on Instagram at cheerjitsugirl.
Oh, yeah. And my kids are Dahlia and Kenny, and their Instagram is fightin.fontes.bjj. Yeah. So give us a follow. Give everyone a follow.
Yes.
Follow all of us.
That's right.
Oh, and follow the Facebook page and answer the damn questions. No,
Yeah,
just kidding.
seriously.
Yeah, the Facebook page is parents. What is it? Parents of Jiu-Jitsu
BJJ
Kids. Is that what
Yeah,
it's called?
yes.
BJJ Kids. Yeah.
Yeah, parents of BJJ Kids. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, let me get that right.
We'll link it all.
Yeah. Thank you, Jim, for all your insight. I appreciate it.
Thank you for listening to the Valley Tudo Mamas podcast. We appreciate your support, and we'll be back with another episode next week, I think.